This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at pm-podcast.com or send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com. Hello and welcome to this premium episode number 169. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast. As always, it's nice to have you with us. This is a premium episode. And this one is really only for you, our premium listeners. Not like the last two premium episodes that we opened up to everybody. This one is really just for you. Thank you for your financial support of the Project Management Podcast. In this episode, we are going to tackle a subject that I don't think we have looked at previously: ethics in project management. To shed more light on this, we are talking once again to Jeff Furman, who has a whole section of ethics in his project management answer book. We're starting out by looking at ethics in general, move on to ethics and legal aspects, and then carefully tread our way through a number of interesting ethical project management situations. And now, let's think up some creative ways on how we can obtain this government permit faster. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcast's feature interview. Today with Jeff Furman, author of the Project Management Answer Book and PMP instructor.
Hello, Jeff, and thanks a lot for coming back onto the Project Management Podcast to talk a little bit more about your book, the Project Management Answer Book.
Hi again, Cornelius.
One important section that you have in your book is ethics in project management. And ethics, it's one of those areas that we project managers don't often address. So let's open up not just the book, but take this opportunity also to use your expertise and talk about ethics in project management. The obvious first question has to be, what is ethics?
Well, in the world outside of project management, ethics, I would say, is really doing the right thing, meaning the most moral, the most fair.
Okay, is there an outside and an inside? So does it mean anything different for project management?
Well, it does a little, because when you're on a project, profits come in, and so every decision is very heavily factored. You're thinking, what's the most successful for the project? What's the most profitable? So profit becomes a very big force, which I very much agree is valid, but I think it leads people astray a bit, because often I think people make the wrong decision. When it's the wrong ethical decision, I think it's because they're going for short-term profit, but they're not thinking long-term. So I think that the difference is you really want to think, what's the best long-term decision, which is usually really the most ethical decision. When you make a good ethical decision, your client is happy. They'll want to recommend you to more customers, that kind of thing. So the point is to make the most long-term decision, and so you're making the most ethical, which is really also the best business decision.
Right, but we also have to say that ethics is not always cost-related, right? So it's not just, if we look at this from the PMBOK guide point of view, it's not just the cost chapter or the procurement chapter, but all the other areas also involve ethics.
Yeah, in other words, treating people well. Everything that you would think of about ethics, I think, applies in the project management world, but it has a special value when you're thinking, what's the best decision for the project, but also the most ethical, also the most long-term. It is actually tricky. If it was easy, anyone could do it. I actually see ethics as an opportunity for project managers. If you can be a more ethical project manager, you are considered more professional. People will think you'll have a competitive advantage over other project managers. And the same with your company. If you're a company that becomes known for being ethical, usually that does tie with long-term growth and success.
What about ethics and legal aspects? Are they mutually inclusive or exclusive?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that does cause confusion. Something can be both illegal and unethical, like robbing a bank. Everyone would agree with that. But there is the nuance where something is not illegal, but it is unethical. And so people will often, if they do something that is not illegal, they'll say, well, it's not illegal. What's the problem? But for instance, as an example, suppose you're leading a project and your client thinks that you personally, and let's say your best people, your A team, are going to be doing the work for them, and that's kind of your agreement. Maybe that's not in the contract, but suppose you get the deal, you sign an agreement, and then you outsource to a cheaper provider. The customer wouldn't like it. They would feel deceived. You didn't break a law if it wasn't in the contract. So this is an example of pretty unethical behavior if you mislead the client, but yet perfectly legal. And yet in the end, this can hurt you. Your client won't be happy. And by the way, it's really not a matter of opinion when it comes to this sort of thing. This is actually right in the PMI Code of Ethics. I think many people are not aware, but it says things like that in the PMI Code of Ethics, like negotiating in good faith. We don't engage in or condone behavior that's designed to deceive others. So most of what you would have a gut feel about on an ethical decision, you would find that it's well supported in the PMI Code of Ethics. So this was an interesting thing. I'm very impressed with the Code of Ethics. And with PMI's permission, I was able to use the code in my book, and I have a one-page summary of the code, and I use it with some of my examples.
One other area where I often see PMP exam sample questions go, and this happens on projects in real life actually, is the question of bribes. Because even though they are illegal and often unethical, in some cultures, bribes are normal cultural behavior. For us in the Western world, bribing is a big no-no, but there are cultures out there where bribes are just a way for the people to make an additional living. And oftentimes, the PMP exam sample questions, they're formulated in such a way that you could be led to think, oh yeah, bribing in this particular culture is normal, so it's an acceptable behavior. And of course, you have to realize then that no matter how the question is formulated, bribing somebody to get some kind of additional benefit for your project is a big no-no.
Yeah, because you're not making your decision based on what's in the best interest of the project. You're compromising quality, let's say, and so that has to be wrong.
Yeah. You earlier on mentioned the example with external customers. And as project management consultants, we often find ourselves between the external customer, the person who buys a product or rather a project management consulting from us, and then the needs of our own company. We sell you this service and we got hired to do this project. Now, as a project manager, I'm kind of in between those two people, rock and a hard place. Where does my loyalty need to lie?
Yeah, I like that question. Loyalty is one thing. I think your loyalty has to be with your company. If I work for such and such company, my loyalty is to them. But that doesn't mean I want to do anything unethical if my company would like it. So I still have to be ethical. I still have to put the client first as much as possible. But literally, my loyalty is always to my company. So it is a balance, and I try to think in my world, I try to pretend that I have three clients. I have the customer, I have the company, and I have the project itself. And so I try to think of literally a triangle. I call it actually in my book an ethical triple constraint. You're always balancing the client, your company, and the project. And it's a little bit like the classic triple constraint of scope, quality, time. Because if you hurt one of the three sides, you can hurt the project. If you favor, let's say, the customer too much, then you're hurting the project or you're hurting your company and so on.
Yeah, but now, I mean, this is now getting into an obvious kind of a question here. What if one of those two sides is asking me to perform something that's unfair?
Then you have to do the right thing and to whatever it takes. So in some situations, you have to escalate. So escalation is one answer in a case like that. If a customer is really saying, I demand this and I have to have it, you can't just go along with it no matter who is asking. So you really have to do the right thing and not hurt the project. That's a case where I think escalating to the sponsor or bringing all the big people, that powers that be together, it would be the answer.
You mentioned the ethical triple constraints, and I'm wondering about the team here. Not sure if you put the team as part of my company. My question is this: do I put my customer first, or do I put my team first?
With that, I would say I would kind of give the customer 2 votes to 1. Okay. I would favor the customer to some extent, but I wouldn't do it so that I'm hurting the team. But I think keeping the customer foremost is a very common practice that is a good one.
Okay. And what would you recommend that a project manager does when they come across unethical behavior, unethical situations on their project? And I mean, there are many things that immediately spring to mind, right? Escalation, discuss it in person, an ethics complaint with PMI. I mean, there are all these options. Where would you start?
I would say that you always would want to start with being upfront and direct with the individual that you have an issue with. Also, though, if it does reach a point where you have to escalate to avoid doing what you feel is the wrong thing, escalate doesn't mean go running around someone's back, which many people, I think, have that impression. You can escalate in a very professional, business-like way. So this is something I mentioned in the book because I've had a lot of experience in big companies, and you can say, for instance, to someone, I think this is a serious enough issue that we need input from senior management here, something like that. You can say, how about the 2 of us go discuss this and let's present it to them as an impartial sort of arbitrator, and let's get the best result for the project. So even escalating, it shouldn't be sneaky at all. It should be very upfront. Let's get the best thing for all concerned.
Earlier on, we discussed ethics versus legal aspects. But there's another item that we can't forget, and that's company politics, right? What kind of problems have you come across in regards to company politics versus ethics, and how have you resolved these?
Well, when you're a project manager a long time, you've kind of seen it all, and I have had cases. I have had cases where I have had to escalate, but I've usually prevailed because I'm kind of always keeping in mind I'm doing what's best for the customer and the company and the immediate project. So if I'm going to go out on a limb and escalate, I'm not doing it because of my own agenda. I'm very carefully thinking, here's what I really believe strongly is best for all parties here, and I'm willing to take this and discuss it with the highest management that we can, and we'll go by their answer. And when you do that, when you say let's take this to a third party up above, really pretty much there are a lot of good outcomes. Either they can say, okay, let's go talk to them, or maybe they'll see that you're sincere and they'll back down and they'll say, okay, you win. Or they'll say, you know what, you can talk to them without me if you want. And so even if you do go to someone senior by yourself, you're still not surprising the other party. They know that you're going to. They even said, go ahead and do it.
Okay. Here's a situation for you that I bet every project manager out there who's led at least 1 or 2 projects has come across. And that's the question of, white lies, half-truths, or not saying everything there is to say in order to cover things up. In particular, obviously, in a status report or during a status reporting meetings to make things look just slightly better than they are, hoping that, it'll blow over, it'll get better in a week or so. What about that?
Yeah, all of that I am against. I mean, all of that is in the category of what's called lying by omission. If you leave out a key fact, it is really lying. And I find that some people don't agree or they're surprised by that. But leaving out a key fact is a form of lying. It's always going to be the wrong idea to do that. And also, I don't think that it's usually successful because everyone hates to be lied to in any way. So if you tell someone a bit of a white lie, probably they can tell anyway. They're going to resent it. If you're senior to them, they might act like it's okay, but that doesn't mean it is okay. It's sort of a form of bullying, I think, to do that. It's usually someone higher up doing it to someone below. And by the way, this is people might be surprised again, but the PMI Code of Ethics actually addresses that. They literally talk about stating half-truths and that kind of thing as one of the tenets of the Code of Ethics.
Yeah, and I would in fact recommend that if you haven't read the PMI Code of Ethics yet, and you're really interested in, what should we do as project managers, doesn't matter whether you're a PMP or non-certified project managers, the PMI Code of Ethics is really a good guideline when it comes to ethical management of our projects. All right then, Jeff, let's end this with a few tips from you to our project managers. What maybe 2 to 3 steps would you recommend to our listeners today? What can they do in order to avoid unethical behavior by themselves, by others?
I would say, first of all, be careful not to abuse your power. When you have power over people, you want to be very careful not to do that. Also, be willing to stand up for what's right. I have usually found that people do respect that you are doing that when you're going for what's good for the project. Really, no one could have a quarrel with that. So standing up for what's right. Also, using a lot of empathy. The more that you can say, okay, I'm going to put myself in the customer's shoes, or if I'm the customer, I'll put myself in the performing organization's shoes. The more empathy you use in your judgment and your interaction, I think the more ethical you'll be and the more successful you'll be on your projects.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Once again, the book is called The Project Management Answer Book, written by Jeff Furman, PMP. It is 450 pages strong and contains 518, if I remember that correctly, questions and answers. It is published by Management Concepts. Jeff, thanks a lot again for your time today talking to us about ethics in project management.
Thanks very much. It was a pleasure.
And that was our ethics discussion with Jeff Furman. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. If you are a project manager and you want to become a PMP, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcast, the Project Management Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching over 38 hours of video training from pmprepcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. The trick isn't coming up with great projects. The trick is making them happen. Until next time.